you're going to have a chance to pray together and contemplate and to think about. We're going to play some soft music, and everybody can make a decision of how you want to be a part of this mission moving forward. But before we get there, Mr. Mitchell, Bobby, nearly 50 years, this has been on the forefront. In addition to your relationship with Christ, your marriage to Sue and your family, FCCI has been where your heart has been for 50 years. Share with us a little bit about where your heart is now as you see this audience and this group. And let me put it this way. We're a community of believers on mission. Not just for the folks that are in the room, but there's individuals across the country and around the world that are on mission together. Share with us, if you would, a little bit about the satisfaction and the joy that you're going to experience being here tonight.
Well, I look out at a room full of people who want to follow Jesus and save the world. Amen. And that's a great thing. It's we've learned a lot this week. We've had a lot of fun. We've laughed, and we have met hopefully some new friends. You know, I look out into the audience, and if it weren't for FCCI, Becky Whitener would not be my friend. And I bet I have 50 friends in here that I would not know from any other way than FCCI. And so many people who come in here, they don't know what it's all about, especially the first timers. But it doesn't take long before they really get it and they can see it. One of the great things about FCCI conferences is that you get a picture of what FCCI is all about. It's not everything, but it's a lot. It's enough to take the next step. And so I think that tonight the Mitchell family is grateful to this whole group at the way you honored my wife and Bobby Lee and Chris's mother. And so it was a great thing for them to do, for you to do, for you to participate. And so from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure from my son's hearts, we appreciate what you did. I think it's time now where we need to pass on some of the financial responsibilities of the ministry. And you are the people who fund FCCI with our other members, but one of the burdens that we had is that we wanted to make sure that we could fund FCCI long term. And so we've, as a board, looked at how to do that. But we're pleased to say, I think the ministry's in good hands. But Steve, I'll let you take it and carry on from there.
Absolutely, Bobby. Thank you. You know, Ryan, there's so many things that we could be excited about and to celebrate. This year to date, there's been so many happenings, city movement. There's been a lot of discussion about what's taking place, because this isn't about the annual conference. This is about what's taking place across the country and around the world. Share with us, if you would, a little bit about what's taking place just over the last 9 months.
Well, so over the last 9 months, God has revealed so many ways in which He's working. And I just want to recognize the FCCI Central team. As I give you these numbers, it's largely because this team has pulled together and been able to do so much more than we have previously. But if you look at where we were in January, where we are today, our groups have grown by 15%. We have held more than 20 local events in various cities like Phoenix, Arizona, like Albuquerque, New Mexico, San Diego, California, Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, Louisville, Kentucky, Denver, Colorado. I'm sure I'm missing some, and if I left you out, I'm sorry. But also international trips to Cairo and Luxor, Egypt, and Nairobi, Kenya, to be able to spread the message that Christian business leader is a calling. It's not I'm a Christian and I'm a business leader. Christian business leader is a ministry calling to advance the Great Commission through the marketplace. So we've seen God move in amazing ways with over 1,500 business leaders gathered in person before this conference. We've launched a weekly podcast series, a monthly webinar series that's engaged thousands of people and helped add value and equip their journey. And we know that God is not even close to being done with any of that. We're just scratching the surface on those things, and that's what has me so very excited about the future.
You know, as business owners, you don't look at just what has taken place, but you often are asking your question, what's next? So Ryan, as you give a quick update on what's transpired over the last 9 months, what is FCCI's vision looking forward between now and the end of the year and then over the next 18 to 24 months as far as what's possible?
Yeah, and I'm not going to comment on what's possible because God gets to determine that, simply because there's nothing that's impossible with God. But I can tell you this, from now till the end of the year, we have local events scheduled in in most of the cities that I just mentioned, looking at Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas as well. There's some talk around Nashville, Tennessee. Had a great conversation the first night here with an entrepreneur from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I'll have to learn my Cajun accent if we go down there. But Baton Rouge, Louisiana, there's a hunger in the marketplace that's brewing among Christian business leaders to understand what it means to truly lead a company for Christ, to truly affect the spiritual direction of this nation. Tomorrow, we're going to have a breakout session around international opportunities. God is pulling together some amazing international opportunities to be able to really emphasize the I in FCCI as we continue to spread this global movement of servant leaders who help each other lead companies for Christ. We know that media presence and online presence are all in need of revamp, and that's how we're going to scale to be able to reach the next generation. So there's so many things that are possible. I'm not going to limit God to just those things, but that's what I know.
You know, as a community, this isn't about what FCCI is doing as a team. Even though it's a talented team on mission, as I've shared, this is about a community. We're about the advancement of the Great Commission and sharing. So Ryan, share with us, if you would, the nuts and bolts of the ministry. How does looking under the hood to the nuts and bolts of FCCI, how does it function? You know, it's not about the conference. Tell us a little bit about how this functions and works.
Well, I'm just going to go from just a pure number standpoint. I'm going to give you the finances of the ministry today. In 2023, our total budget is $2.1 million. To date, we have raised about $700,000 of that. That means there's $1.4 million yet to be raised through the end of this year. And that is cash that is needed to be able to fund the nuts and bolts of the ministry. It costs money for local events. It costs money to send staff to travel. It costs money to go international and spread this message to help advance the Great Commission through the marketplace. Technology costs money. Media costs money. All of those things. So it's not that it's not that it's about the money. It's about the life change that can happen that requires money to be able to do.
We have a hunger in our nation for discipleship and just doing life together. Feeling a level of comfort and a boldness to share our faith. And some of that has been expressed over these last couple of days. I had an epiphany last April. Ryan's heard me share this story. A year ago last Christmas, I was sending some text messages to a number of friends around the country. And then the text message conversation shifted to, isn't it amazing to think about and realize how many people are celebrating Christmas today? This was in Christmas morning 2021. Celebrating Christmas for the first time as a Christian, as a believer. We just started to celebrate that in groups of text messages with friends around the country. But I had one buddy of mine that sent me a text and said, what are you doing on April the 23rd? And I responded and I said, whatever it is I'm in. And he responded back and said, well, you better call me this afternoon. So I found a window in the afternoon. I called him, and his name was Chris. And he said, I've asked Heather to marry me. And I said, April 23rd. And he said, yes, that's the date of the wedding. I said, well, we'll be there. And he said, well, we want you to officiate the wedding. So here I found myself in this situation. But that's not the epiphany. The epiphany was a year later, Chris and I were reflecting on that moment. And the epiphany for me was, how many times in my life has God spurred me, touched my heart, or encouraged me to do something? And my first response was, let me look at my calendar. Let me look at my checkbook. Or do we respond, God, whatever it is I'm in? God can touch our lives and inspire us. So be thinking about whatever it is I'm in. Brian, for you, whatever it is I'm in, why are you doing what you're doing here at FCCI?
I'm here, short answer is because God called me to be here. I was not looking for a job or for a position, but when I got a recruiting email from FCCI last summer, I just had one of those moments I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have had, where you just feel like God's tapping you on the shoulder saying you need to pay attention to this. And so fortunately, I was obedient and paid attention and started a process to meet Mr. Mitchell and Sue at the time and the rest of the FCCI board, and it just became abundantly clear that this is the right assignment for me and I was the right person for FCCI. So I'm all in on this ministry because I believe with my whole heart that if we're going to truly transform the world, and I believe the local church is the hope of the world, but I also believe we have to build bridges into it. And the marketplace is one of those mountains that we need to influence in order to build bridges into the local church, in order to spread the gospel, in order to see what Sean Dunn talked about this afternoon, in order to see somebody, instead of suffering for eternity, celebrating for eternity. And I believe the marketplace has so much to do with the spiritual destination for millions and millions of people around the world. That's why I'm here.
Whose heart is in for this journey and this mission? All right, now this is the moment you're waiting for. It's gonna be the soft music.
Hey, Steve, can I address just two things
Yes.
before we do that? Not that I want to spoil the soft music, but here's a couple of things I've heard, and I just feel compelled to just take them head on. So you're sitting here, and you're like, man, we just paid how many thousands of dollars to be at this conference? And now these three are up here saying we need more money. And I want to tell you this. Because of the way FCCI has operated, this conference is a break-even event at best for us. Because we want to make it as accessible to as many people as we possibly can. So when we pay for conference registration fees, we're going to bring in for this conference around $400,000. We're going to pay out around $400,000. The conference itself is not a net financial gain to the ministry. So yes, we are here asking for money because when we pay our conference fees, we're actually just paying for what we get in return from the conference. There's another level of generosity, and Ken Boa and Russ Crossan did a great job on this yesterday, that when we truly say, God, I'm in for the mission, that's that level of giving they're looking for. The other piece I'd like to address is, historically, I think there's been the perception, if not the reality, that there are a few wealthy families that kind of fund everything for FCCI. And so it's okay if I don't give to the point of my capacity. And I'm just here to dispel that myth. It's just not reality. And so it requires all of us. This vision is so much bigger than any one of us. It's so much bigger than any one organization. It's going to take us all linking arms to be able to see this world transformed in this way.
Ryan, thank you. I appreciate the openness and the transparency. So, okay, here's the time you get. We're going to take just a few minutes. Be thinking about what you would like to do to contribute to advance financially the mission of FCCI, the Great Commission and the work that's being done. The Moys here, they might be at an age where participation is not big, so think about your favorite number. If anybody has a hard time with this, you just think about your favorite number and add a come in 3 zeros. But do that. It's a very simple exercise. And then just write Barry Sutliff on the card. Let's take a couple of minutes and do that. And we're so grateful. Here's the commitment card that's on the tables. We'd like to ask that you just take a couple of minutes and do this. You can see in the right-hand column, name, email, phone number, and then whatever that favorite number is that you have. Do we have some soft music we're going to play? We have to be official. And we'll take just a couple of minutes to do that.
I tasted and see of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is
All right, Chad and Robin, do you need some help figuring out a number there?
to be
I'm just kidding. But I do want to say that, just so you know, that board members and staff are also all in. 100% participation from the staff and the board, so I just wanted to let you know that. If you've reached a point that you feel like you've made that commitment, I'm just going to ask that you hold up your card, and one of the members on the team is going to come by and collect that and safely place that in so no one will have access to it. But if you've got your card and it's ready to be picked up, if you could just hold it up and somebody on the team will come by and grab it. You've got a couple of us over here.
I tasted and seen
Carmazzi, we appreciate you matching everybody tonight. We appreciate that.
where my heart becomes free and my shame.
And there's so many of you in the room who have given generously so far this year. And all of the things that we talked about the ministry has, or that God has accomplished through the ministry, you have a big part in that. So I just want to express gratitude for you. Thank you.
You are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere.
If you have a card, just go and hold it up. There's some folks in the front.
God is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, let us become more aware of your
100% of any commitment, whether it be a cash commitment between now and the end of the year, or if you have questions about a strategic gift, you can feel free to see me afterwards. But 100% is tax deductible, just so everybody knows that. All right, anybody else? Just hold up that card high. We want to make sure that we're getting that collected. There's a couple of more over here.
Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord.
If you're still praying and contemplating, you can certainly visit somebody on the way out this evening. If you're needing an evening to rest on it and come back in the morning, certainly welcome that. I just want to have a time of prayer for this offering and this investment through FCCI to change the landscape of America through business community, reaching the next generation and seeing Christ flourish in the marketplace and across our country, and then certainly with our partners that are globally around the world. So, Lord, we have in our own lives so many things to be thankful and grateful for. Lord, thank you for grace and mercy in our lives. We appreciate that you love each one of us. Thank you for the Mitchell family, the legacy of Bobby and Sue and their commitment over these plus 50 years. We appreciate their commitment, Lord. Thank you for Ryan and this next season. Lift up the board and the team. And we also, Lord, are just grateful for those that we're running with in collaboration across the country that are not here with us this evening. Incredible men and women of all ages and all backgrounds, desiring to be bold to glorify you. Lord, and as I've been saying for a number of years, I want to live a life to be so transparent that others would desire to know you as I do. It's in Christ's name I pray. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, FCCI is pleased to welcome you to this Tuesday evening presentation from the Inspire to Lead Conference at the Ritz-Carlton Dove Mountain Resort in Tucson, Arizona. This evening's speaker is the author of The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, which has sold over 550,000 copies and has been translated in 25 languages. His work in conjunction with Dr. Gary Chapman has resulted in an online Motivating by Appreciation assessment, which has been taken by over 350,000 employees worldwide. Our speaker has written articles and been interviewed by the BBC News, Business Week, Entrepreneur.com, Fortune, and many others, having taught around the world, bringing a vast understanding of employee motivation and business success. Would you please join in welcoming to the Ritz-Carlton Ballroom stage Christian psychologist, author, and business motivation expert, Dr. Paul White.
Thank you. Good evening. Woohoo! I'm excited to be here. Anybody else? Let's try a woohoo. 1, 2, 3. Pretty good. If we continue on that, we might be able to do a yee-haw, which is what we do in my part of the country. And I'm from Kansas, and just so put it to rest, you know, Dorothy would be about 110 years now, so I don't know her. And we put Toto down a long time ago, so don't ask me if I know Toto. Hey, how many of you have heard or are familiar with 5 love languages? Let me see if I raise your hands. Yeah, I figured that with this group. Let me tell you a story about how I got involved with this. I grew up in the context of a family-owned business in Lawrence, Kansas, where the University of Kansas is. And in the middle of my career, around 2000, a little before, and then from the next 15 to 18 years, I traveled around the country working with family-owned businesses, largely successful ones that we were dealing with business succession planning and wealth transfer planning. I was the family guy trying to help the senior couple agree on things and then communicate clearly to the family. And so in the midst of that, I was in North Carolina working with a family, a highway construction company, and I walked into the father and CEO's office and I said, you know, how's the plan going? And he said, it's going well. My son's stepping up. I think it's going to work. So I walk across the hall to where his son was, and I asked him the same question, and his answer was, this is a disaster. It will never work. I can never please my dad. And I could understand that from some personal experience. And I thought, I wonder if the 5 love languages with my wife and I were going through probably the 3rd time, because I'm sort of slow learner on that kind of thing. And thought, well, I wonder if this could work in workplaces. So I actually wound up pursuing Dr. Chapman for about a year. He had sort of the nicest bulldog assistant that I could not get through to meet with him, but finally did, pitched the idea, and we did the online assessment that I'll tell you a little bit about, and then started doing some trainings with nonprofits and schools and churches and small businesses, Friend Zone, and then wrote the book together, and came out originally in 2011, and then we've revised it a couple of times. So that's sort of the story. Now, those of you that know your preferred love language, I'll just tell you that that does not mean that you know your primary language of appreciation. We've actually done some research that found that about 2/3 of the time, your primary love language is one of your top 2 appreciation languages, but it's not a one-for-one correlation. And as we'll talk, just knowing a person's language isn't sufficient in the workplace. So let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm a psychologist, and just to make sure we understand, psychiatrists are physicians who largely these days use medication to deal with behavioral and emotional issues, right? Psychologists are people who go to school for a really long time to be able to charge you a lot of money to give you the same advice that your mom and your grandma gave you, and if you would have listened then, you wouldn't have to see us now. So I understand the value proposition there. All right. I'm pretty straightforward and practical. I grew up outside of Kansas City. I'm a Midwesterner. I have lived in Chicago, Phoenix, and Atlanta, so I have the right to say y'all, and all y'all, because I lived here for 4 years, but I'm not a Southerner for sure. And let me just mention this, and we'll circle back to this, but you may want to write this down. This is my email for this event. It's yes.drpaul@gmail.com. And if you put FCCI in the subject line, I'm going to send you both the slides and a bunch of other information. So it's yes.drpaul@gmail.com. Now, and I like to have fun. Anybody like to have fun? Okay, I got 2 people over here. All right. Does anybody else like to have fun? All right. Do you know that learning goes better when you're having fun, right? And you remember it more and have positive associations with it. So we'll try to have a little fun. I have a laugh track table. Let's try it out. Thank you. Yeah, I always plant those just in case the group misses the joke. I just point to them, and they, help make it go. All right, so here's a cartoon that is sort of sad, actually, and this is not our goal. He gets a certificate saying not our worst employee, and he says, well, just the same, it's nice to get an award. And I feel bad for him. He's got really low self-esteem, but that's not what we're going to talk about here. Tonight, I want to share 4 misconceptions with you that most leaders have about appreciation. Tomorrow, I'm doing a breakout session in the morning that we're going to go deeper into the 5 languages of appreciation. We're going to go over it a little bit, and then also how to apply it. So the first misconception is that employee recognition and authentic appreciation are the same thing, and they clearly are not. They do overlap. They can, that we can recognize people for good work and achieving tasks, but for us, the key is that it needs to be authentic. And actually, you can go through an employee recognition program and not really care about the person or believe in it. You're just sort of, it's your role to do. And so I've worked in settings where one person asked, well, why does it have to be authentic? And I was stunned, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. But I'm not here to teach people how to look like they appreciate somebody. We really want to get to the heart of the matter. And there are some difficult people that are harder to appreciate than others, and don't point at anybody right now, but we can get past that. So here's unfortunately the way a lot of some corporations and organizations do. He says, every time you do something right, I'll punch your rewards card, and when you reach 10,000 punches, you earn a high five. And that's what some recognition programs are like. They're like, you have to do a lot of little things to get not much more when you get past that. So recent research showed that 94% of all companies and organizations in the U.S. Have some form of employee recognition. It may be as little as an automatic email on your birthday, but most are a little bit bigger than that. But most employee recognition programs don't work in this sense. They don't help people actually feel valued and appreciated, partly because that's not what they were designed for. They were actually around performance issues. And so if you have an employee recognition program that sets out goals, you monitor them, and then reward them, that's what they're about, and they can work. You want people to do the right thing, but that's not the same as them feeling valued about it. Interestingly, there's some research that shows some problems with employee recognition. One study showed that 65% of North Americans, include Canadians in the study, said they've received no recognition or appreciation at their workplace in the past year. And when I first saw this, I'm like, how can this be that they've not heard anything since we have all these employee recognition programs? And I think the key word is they haven't received it, right? I have grandchildren that don't live close by, and we can send them a gift, but if they don't get the gift, they didn't get it, right? And so I think sometimes organizations do things for recognition that just don't hit the mark. They don't really get to the person. And so there's this sense of missing the mark. Another study with a number of companies across the U.S. found that 58% of managers believe they do a pretty good job of showing recognition for work well done. I like this statistic. It feels realistic. It's not 95% say I'm doing a great job. About half, a little over, say I'm doing okay. The problem is only 29% of the people who work for the managers feel like the manager is doing a good job. And so there's this disconnect there. And when I first started this out, I was talking to some HR friends. I said, you know, this employee recognition thing isn't working. And they said, we know, but we don't know what else to do. And that's still the case with as far as employee engagement. It still continues to decline over time, even though we have all these activities. So I want you to think, what do you think is the number one factor that actually affects how much people enjoy their jobs? What makes them feel good about their job? I'll give you two hints. It's not money, okay? And I have to tell you, most business leaders, managers, they think about money, benefits, compensation. 89% of managers in one study said, I think, you know, if they don't get paid enough, they're going to leave. But only 12% of the employees said that they leave for more money. Now, they may get more money, but leaving a job takes a lot of emotional energy, right? It's like you have to sort of disengage, you get unhappy, you disengage, and you have to look and re-engage. And so it takes an emotional driver to make that happen for somebody to actually decide to leave. And there's also a difference between what motivates people and what makes them feel valued and appreciated. People can be motivated about money and financial compensation, but that does not necessarily mean that they feel valued. In fact, I've talked to high-performing salespeople and say, they don't really give a rip about me. As long as my numbers are good, it's okay. So there's a difference there. One study showed that 79% of people who leave a job voluntarily cite lack of appreciation as one of the key factors. So almost 80%, 4 out of 5 people who leave. How many of you have problems with staff turnover? People leaving, not being able to fill the positions? Anybody? Okay. And so you've got to pay attention. In fact, if you remember one statistic, it's that one, the 79%. We'll come back to that. Actually, more recently, MIT, the Sloan School of Business, did a study where they found that in the Great Resignation of 21-22, that 3 times the people said they were leaving because they didn't feel appreciated in comparison to compensation issues. Not 3% more, not 30% more, 3 times. You got it? It's an issue for employees. And if you want to keep them, you need to pay attention to this. Whether you agree, don't understand it or not, welcome to reality, y'all, that we're dealing with a different set of expectations about work. Now, I'm not saying that we should have a parade. Janice showed up today. Woohoo! Let's have a parade. That's not what we're talking about. So, I couldn't, sort of pay for this kind of marketing, but the Boston Consulting Group did a research study of 200,000 people across the world and found that the number one factor, they gave a whole list of things that people could choose from. The number one factor that impacted how much people felt appreciated at work was feeling appreciated. Remember, it's not the same as employee recognition. What's the difference? People say, well, Paul sort of just, netted out for me. Well, from our perspective, at least, recognition is largely about performance, and it's a good thing. We want to do it. Early on, I was sort of hard on recognition programs. Now, we've worked with a number of organizations that it's a both and, right? Because if you reward for doing a good job, but also we believe appreciation is about the person. How many of you, besides me, are a person like outside of work? Anybody else a person? Okay. Maybe even at work, you're a person, right? I think one of the things that COVID and the pandemic taught us is that we have lives outside of work, and the two impact each other, right? If something's going on outside of work, it impacts work. If something's going on at work, it impacts our personal life. And we really believe that employees are people. And as a follower of Christ, well, Dr. Chapman, we believe that we're created by God in his image for his glory. And that we all have value regardless of performance. Yes, I'm a psychologist, so it's touchy-feely stuff. But it's about work, all right? And we're going to see that appreciation and work go hand in hand. See the gal that looks pretty stressed? Anybody ever gone through a tough time in life while you also are working, right? My wife and I had twins when we were in Phoenix, away from family. Sleep deprivation max. I would not wish twins on anybody, at least for the first 2 years. After that, it's pretty fun. But there are times that people have difficult situations in their life, whether it's a senior parent that they're having to care for, a spouse or a family member in the hospital, a teenager out of control, whatever. And do they cease to have value during that time? No. And I was a child protective services worker in Arizona, in Phoenix at that time, and I was not the best team member. I mean, I did all right, and I didn't need a goal. I needed support. I needed understanding and caring as a person. So, first misconception that a lot of leaders have is that employee recognition and authentic appreciation are the same. The second is what the goal of appreciation is. A lot of people think, the goal is to help people feel good. And we would like that to happen, right? We don't not want that to happen, but that's really not the goal in this situation in the workplace. The goal of appreciation, from my point of view, is to help create a healthy, well-functioning organization. Anybody want a healthy, well-functioning organization? Woohoo, let's hear woohoo for that. All right, so, I think it's sort of like oil in an engine, right? If you have an engine, pieces working together mechanically, no oil, there's friction, there's heat, there's maybe sparks, and it gets stuck. And it just takes more effort to get stuff done, right? But if you put oil into it, it flows better. And I think appreciation is like oil. It's not necessarily the goal or the mission of the organization, but it helps you get there better without heat, tension, sparks, lots of more effort, right? So here's some things that we know that happen when team members feel valued. First of all, tasks get done. That's a good thing. Goals are reached. Team members work together well. There's less territorialism. Problems are addressed and challenges are overcome. Actually, when team members don't feel valued, creative problem solving goes down. Why? Because creative problem solving takes effort. And if you don't think anybody cares, you're going to say, I'm going to let somebody else deal with it, right? And they just pass it on. Also, turnover decreases. We've got strong numbers about that. Clients have positive experiences with you because your team members are enjoying their work, feel like they're doing what they're supposed to, they're getting valued for it, versus, calling up and getting a really grumpy somebody that doesn't want to talk to you. and productivity and profitability increase. I brought some books that you can purchase if you want. They're usually $17. We're selling them for 10. And the second chapter has over 50 research citations of all the different kinds of things that improve in a business, including less reported injuries on the workplace, less staff theft, all kinds of things. Now, if you look at that list, would you like to have an organization like that? Tasks get done, goals are reached. It's like, yeah, let's get there. Because you know what? I know this is the bad part, but you're working with people, y'all. You realize that? And so we got to deal with the people. And I have a cartoon once that said, all I want is everybody to leave and leave me alone. And it was sort of like he just would do better if he had worked alone. Third misconception is that appreciation is mainly just words. In our culture, when we hear appreciation, we think about words, thank you, maybe a compliment and so forth. And it can be thank you in whatever language it is, maybe a little note, or great job. By the way, we have, I guess right now, 85,000 people on our newsletter list, and we do polls occasionally. We did a poll and asked what people don't want to hear for appreciation. One of the top answers was, good job, all right? Knock it out of your vocabulary, because it doesn't mean anything to people because it doesn't take any thought or effort. Tomorrow we'll talk about the specific ways to give effective compliments, but it's one of the keys is that you have to be specific. Don't just give a global good job or even great job, all right? So words and appreciation aren't exactly the same thing. In fact, most leaders, when we talk to them, they believe that appreciation is primarily communicated through words. They say, okay, well, I tell them thanks, and I've written them a note, and so forth, and they don't know what else to do. But the reality is we have now 395,000 people that have taken our online assessment. It's a decent data set, don't you think, for people? And over 50% of people don't value words as the main way that they want to be shown appreciation. So if you only use words, hear me, if you only use words from the get-go, you are missing the mark with over half of your team members. So we need to get beyond that. Part of it is an enculturation thing. Part of it is it's sort of easy to do. But one of our core principles, and one of the things I had to get past, is that our core principles are not very deep and difficult to understand. It's like, okay, not everybody feels appreciated in the same way. I know that's like really new news to you, but it is true. The problem is that our actions don't always show that, because we tend to do the same one or two things for everybody with good intention, but we don't know what else to do. So that's where the 5 languages come in. And yes, they are the same in name as the 5 love languages: words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, and yes, even physical touch. And we will do a group hug at the end because I know you're looking forward to that. So we're going to just briefly address each one. And tomorrow we're going to go deep on them, as well as some other challenges and so forth. Words of affirmation, pretty easy to understand. They're words that are affirming. We are affirming verbally the worth and value of somebody else. And the most common way is just sort of in a personal conversation. We'll talk about other forms, including writing and so forth. But basically, you're saying, I really value either this about you, a character quality, that you're dependable, that you're honest, you have integrity, or about a specific action that they did. That thanks for staying late and helping clean up from the event so that the room was ready for tomorrow morning's event. Okay? So words are the largest group of what people value, and we'll talk about the data tomorrow, but it's not, like I said, it's less than 50%. Quality time is the second language, and it's interesting that quality time really differs generationally. We do research. I publish at least 15 professional journal articles, and one of them looked at quality time, the types of time that people like, and also differences between remote workers and in-person workers. Quality time has a very interesting sort of generational interaction effect. For those of us that are a bit older, quality time largely meant time with our supervisor or manager. If they spent time with us, either listening to us or sharing input about how to do something or listening to our ideas, we felt valued. But that's not true for younger workers. In fact, we just completed a study, I think it was, I don't know what the number is, 190,000 people were involved. And as we looked at generations and sort of did it through decades of 65 or 60 plus, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, every generation values time more than the prior generation. Okay? Words are still the number one, but it moves from about time being 26% to 35% for younger workers. Now, don't panic if you're an older leader, because just because a team member, especially a younger team member, has quality time as their language, doesn't mean they want time with you, okay? You may be wonderful, you may be great, you have all kinds of wisdom, but they want to hang out with their friends and their peers. And so that's really what quality time is about for the younger team members, that they like to get together and do things, they like to do collaborative work projects and so forth. So one of the things we learned early on is just knowing a person's language of appreciation is not sufficient to really sort of communicate effectively. You also need to know the specific action within the language and from whom they want that. So for example, you may, or let's say a team member is going to have a barbecue and watch the Georgia Bulldogs beat up on somebody, but they don't want to invite their supervisor, right? And so we get very specific in our assessment of that. Acts of service are not acts that rescuing a low-performing colleague. They're small things that just show that you're getting to know the other person. Remember, appreciation is about the person. And so it can be something like bringing, let's say the two biggest contexts for acts of service are, first of all, somebody's working on a time-limited project and they are working hard on it, banging away, trying to get done with it. And it's what can you do to help out with that? And they could be bringing a meal into them, dinner, buying them dinner, bringing it in for them so they keep working on it. Could be that they delegate part of the task to you. It could be that you intercept their phone calls and cover those so they can stay focused on the project. So acts of service is an important one because there are people that words don't mean as much. You ever known anybody that has sort of the mantra that words are cheap? Don't tell me, you support me, show me. And so there are certain people that if you talk at them, you actually may get a negative if their language is acts of service. So it's important to know what it is and also what they want. Culturally, in our culture, I'll say mainly in the U.S., that if you ask somebody that if you can help them with something, what's their first response? No, I'm good. I got it, right? Especially Minnesota, Chicago. I mean, they're like, no, I can do it by myself. And so we have to teach people how to get past that initial sort of resistance because it really can mean a lot to them. Tangible gifts are not bonuses. It's not raises. It's not benefits or compensation. That's between the employee and employer. Tangible gifts, again, hear me, are about finding out what your colleague likes and makes them feel special, right? So it could be, do you have an idea what the most commonly given gift is or in the workplace? What? Gift cards. Gift cards actually are the second one. It's food, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Gift cards is interesting. We did research with, 10,000 people or something to find out what kind of gift cards do people like. Guess what? There's two groups of gift card people. There are people that like generic gift cards, Visa, Amazon, that kind of thing, so they can spend it on whatever. They can decide what they want to do. There are people that like very specific gift cards, so they can't spend it on whatever. right? So it's for their bookstore, it's for iTunes, it's for Cabela's if they're a fisherman or a hunter or whatever. So again, it's about specificity, that we can't do the same thing for everybody. Oh, the issue of fairness comes up. And you know what? People don't care if you are fair if they know that you care about them. And because I get this question all the time, well, what about, somebody gets to go out to lunch and the other person gets a note? Is that fair? Well, the response I teach people to say is, I didn't know that you really liked going out to lunch, and that would show that I appreciate you. I'd be glad to do that. But from the information I got from your inventory, you came out with words, so that's what I did. So we can always deal with it. Now, larger corporations, there's ways to deal with this. We break it down into units and really apply it into smaller groups. I would say this, especially for gifts. We found that a person's primary language of appreciation is also the language they are most easily offended in, right? It's sort of like a radio, or a TV. You can get good news, you can get bad news on it, and that's how your receptor works. Same thing with your language. People that have tangible gifts as their primary language, which is only 7%. So if you're spending a lot of money on gifts for people, there's a good chance you're wasting money because they get offended when everybody gets the same thing. This is the place where it is the thought that counts. It's not the amount of money. It's that you see a magazine on the rack and it's like you're an SEC fan, and so they get you a football magazine about that. Or if you're planting a garden or something. So it's small things that are showing that you're getting to know the person. Physical touch. I love this one. So when I speak to HR managers, we have paramedics in the room because they say, we're going to get sued. And that is not the case. We're talking about appropriate physical touch. And appropriate physical touch, actually, we included it in the model. We wondered at first whether we should. But Dr. Chapman studied anthropology, and he said, I don't want to advocate a touchless society even in the workplace, because there are times in an appropriate relationship at the right time in culture that touch can be deeply meaningful. And I experienced that personally. My sister died unexpectedly a few years ago, and she and I were close, and it was a very deep, wounding experience for me. And there were times when I'd be in my office and I'd tear up and I'd remember something. And if a team member was there or walked by and saw it, it can make you feel uncomfortable. But for them to say, what's up? Are you okay? And I could tell a story. They didn't have to become my therapist, right? They didn't have to do anything. I just needed them to listen and hear what's going on with me. And appropriate physical touch also included, mainly for this reason, it happens, okay? And it's spontaneous celebration. When something goes well at work, what do people do? High five, right? What else? Fist bump, right? Philly, fist bump. Maybe a congratulatory handshake. And actually, cross-culturally, a pat on the back is the most accepted type of physical touch. We know that our resources are in 25 languages, our assessments in 9, and used in Thailand and Brazil and Europe. And it differs culturally, right? I lived in Atlanta for a while, and so what kind of touch y'all do in Atlanta and the Southeast? Side hugs, right? I'm so glad to know. And but anybody here from New York? I know we got Delaware people. Anybody New York, New Jersey? Yeah, see, there aren't many Christians there. So anyway, that is not true. There are a lot of Christ followers in New York. I don't know about New Jersey, but in New York. And so this is what physical touch is in New York. You ready? Hey. Right? And if they get closer than 3 feet, you check them for weapons, and then we have all security issues. But anyway, it's physical touch is less than 1%, and it's always the recipient gets to tell what is appropriate for them. Fourth misconception is that the primary responsibility for communicating appreciation falls to leaders, to supervisors and managers. And we started out that way, but we found fairly quickly, first of all, that team members wanted to know how to show appreciation and encouragement to one another. When somebody's having a bad day, who's the first person to know about it? Their colleague, right, that works alongside of them. And also, it's too much responsibility and heavy of a burden for a manager to sort of carry for everybody. And so we really focus on teaching team members how to show appreciation to one another. And it's really important to understand that, because if you think it's top down, you're going to have resistance from supervisors, from managers, and it's just not going to work as well. We want them involved, but it's not that they have to carry the load to communicate to everybody. The other thing, remember I talked about quality time? Younger employees want to know or spend time with their compatriots. It's also true that younger employees want to know that they're appreciated by their peers and colleagues. In the old days, there was a saying, people don't leave a job, they leave a manager, a boss, right? These days, that's not so true. Younger workers, as long as they are getting along well with their colleagues, can endure you or some other manager that they don't like as much. So one of the cool things that we learned over time is that appreciation is not top-down. It's not organizationally driven. It needs to be organizationally supported, but it's not driven that way. And that appreciation can flow in any direction at all. And the cool thing is it can be from whatever position, from a receptionist to a vice president. If he or she really handled a situation well and this person observed it. Or we really encourage applying it across departments. Somebody in accounting can really value and appreciate some help from somebody in IT that helped get their computer or their program to work, even though they don't report to them. It's not organizational. It's just, thanks for taking the time and getting that fixed for me. So it frees things up. One of the things about changing culture in a company, it needs to be both structural. You have to structure some interactions, but it needs to be spontaneous as well. If it's only structural, if it feels very cold and mechanical, if it's only spontaneous, it won't last very long. It'll sort of fizzle out. So, people often ask, well, how do you find out how somebody wants to be appreciated? Well, I don't know about you, but if somebody says, Paul, if I want to show you appreciation, how should I show you appreciation? That's a weird question. And also, I'm going to say, I don't know, tell me thanks, and that's about all you get. And so you don't really get much. Also, with love languages, Dr. Chapman talks about, observing what the person does, and that's often the language that they want. That's not true for gift givers. Gift givers don't always like to receive gifts as much as they like to give them. But in the workplace, you don't have that many data points. You don't have that many opportunities to see how somebody either shows or receives appreciation, so it doesn't really work. That's why, our inventory works and continues to grow. I mean, we have about 200, 250 people take it a day, so we're going to hit, 400,000 here fairly quick. But also, we found that it's the specific actions. So we have versions of our inventory for general business, for schools, medical settings, ministries and nonprofits, government agencies, trades, dentists, veterinarians, when we continue to create them, because an act of service looks very different to a school teacher than it does to a nurse in a hospital or to a carpenter, right? A carpenter in act of services help clean up the work site at the end of the day. And so we created the Motivating by Appreciation inventory. It's been taken by a lot of people, and it's just fun. And what's more fun is we share, have a system of allowing you to share the information among the team. It's nice to know what you think, but it's more important to find out what your team members think. And we actually developed a training process and a train the trainer kit for internal HR people to be able to take and find out not only their languages, but the actions and how to communicate that. So, here's a fact, and you need to pay attention to that word because psychologists hardly ever use the word fact, all right? Largely because they don't believe in them, I don't think. But we absolutely do know how to train team members to successfully communicate authentic appreciation. And we've done it. We haven't found a type of setting that we've done it yet. We had a New York Times article written about our work with miners in South Dakota. You think about miners, sort of tough guy kind of things, and they love our stuff, and we have visual symbols with each of the languages, and they have stickers that they put on their hard hats when they take assessment, and that's actually part of their onboarding process. They earn the right after their probation period, of 3 months or 6 months, to be able to take the assessment and go through the training. And we've done it with a lot of places here and for our clients. And I put the big names out there, but we work with probably thousands of schools now, medical offices, manufacturing, you name it, professional practices, all that kind of stuff. We work with ICE, the law enforcement team. We even work with TSA, and we can work with TSA. Hey, talk about a tough job. Your job is to do things that your clientele don't like or want. So, here's the deal. Anybody successful at a diet that you never started? Anybody? Okay. And it's the same thing. I work with tech people, with engineers, and they love to do Gantt charts and spreadsheets and figure out a plan. And then sometimes higher level business leaders want to sort of figure out how to do it all across the organization. We find that the best way to start is with somebody, all right? And that similarly within a workplace, we work best in communicating. I'll come in and speak to the leadership or the whole team sometimes, and sort of explain the concepts and the language, so if they talk about acts of service, people know what they're talking about. But then we find one or two leaders that would like to try it out with their group. And we do it a pilot group. And we've done it with DirecTV all across the organization, with Miller Coors, which I had an ethical issue I had to think through with Dr. Chapman. Like, do we want to do this? Well, do these people deserve to be valued and appreciated? Yeah. I grew up as a Quaker and pretty conservative culturally that way, so I had to think through it, And so here's the deal. We have to get practical. So here's the practical deal. Get your phone or pen out or something, and I want you to think of somebody you'd like to encourage. Appreciation is about the past. Encouragement is about the present or the future. Same actions communicate the same. Here's 3 groups you might pull from. 1, somebody that you work with on a day-to-day basis that if they didn't do what they do, your life would be a lot tougher. You got somebody in mind? Okay. Secondly, what was that number I wanted you to remember? Anybody remember? 79%. 79% of the people who don't feel valued, well, let me say it, I want to make sure I quote the stat right. Of people who leave voluntarily, they cite a lack of appreciation as one of the key factors 79% of the time. If you have a key team member that you do not want to lose, that your organization would struggle if they weren't part, you better make sure they're on your radar to show appreciation, or they are on the trading block. All right? Third group, people that are discouraged. Some of us get into tasks or projects that are tough, and we keep hitting challenges and obstacles, and we have to work through them. And you want to encourage them to keep going. So, of those 3 groups, I want you to think of somebody, think of their name, their initials, and then I want you to identify for what do you want to communicate appreciation. What do you value about them? And it's not just to give you some ideas about performance. It's not always performance. There are things that we can value about people that don't really tie directly into their performance. For example, I personally like to work with cheerful people more than grumpy people, right? It may not tie into their performance necessarily, but I have a team member that's just got a delightful smile and laugh, and I love it when she's around because she just sort of lights up the office. Also, it doesn't have to be about work. You can value, let's say you have a team member that's struggling, still learning their position and responsibilities. And they're, let's say Dave, and Dave is training for a half marathon. You say, Dave, man, that is so cool that you have the self-discipline to train for the marathon, half marathon. Or you have a single mother who's really committed to her kids. You say, Marta, man, I am just so impressed with how committed you are to your kids and how much you love them. Is it about work? No. Is it about her? Absolutely. Does it create a sense of value, of connection, of loyalty? Yes, if you need that motivation. So it doesn't always have to be about work. And then figure out how and when you're going to communicate it. Now, for those, if you're thinking about staying in the room, there's this thing we deal with in the book called the weirdness factor, and that is, well, we just talked about it, so you think I'm just doing it because Dr. White said we're supposed to do this. So here's a little sentence to him to help you pass that. You say, I know you may think I'm saying this just because we had this wonderful speech by Dr. White, and by the way, on webinars at the end, I just tell myself I did a great job because I get no feedback at all from the audience. And you say, well, in spite of that, I really do value or appreciate you for this. Okay, so I haven't seen too many people move, so I'm going to wait till I see some people move about writing some stuff down or your phone or whatever, because I want you to apply it. If you do not apply it, it does not go anywhere. It just doesn't magically appear, all right? And if you want somebody else to do it, it might be good to start with you, right? That's like a psychologist speaking to you. So as I said, I brought books. They're going to be out in the dessert area right on the table right out there. $10 cash, or we got the square thing. You can just tap it, or if you don't have any kind of money anywhere, hopefully you got them somewhere, but we can bill you for it. And I brought 50 books because I didn't want to schlep a bunch back. And they're all autographed. My autograph sort of devalues the book, so you've got to go try to get Dr. Chapman's autograph, and then it'll increase the value. And also in the back of the book, there is a code to take our online inventory, the basic immediate inventory, so you can see what that's like. Don't forget, yes, Dr. Paul at Gmail. Write me, I'll get you the slides. I'll get you the New York Times article in Forbes that was written about us, a sample expanded report, maybe some other stuff, I don't know. Final comment, finish up. Before the final comment. A lot of talk in the last 2 days, good talk, about loving our team members and employees. I'm not trying to self-promote or anything, but I cannot think of a better, more practical way to show the love of Christ, the people that you work with, who work for you, than finding out the specific way they feel valued and communicating that to them. That has been a vision of mine from the get-go. To be honest, the secular workforce gets this seemingly more than Christian organizations. I study toxic organizations, and the worst examples were Christian ones. But I believe those of us who are followers of Christ have the opportunity to practically show how we care about and are interested in people by finding out how they like to be shown that they're appreciated and doing it in that way. Otherwise, we waste a bunch of time doing stuff that doesn't matter. And that's not good business. So, now my final comment is, be thankful for the people that you get to work with. I know you have good people. Man, this is an impressive group. But also, celebrate each other. Now, that picture does not fit this group, okay? That's line dancing for younger people. You guys celebrate this way, and that's fine. If you want to line dance, we'll try to pull that together. But anyway, all right. Thanks so much, and I'll be around. Be glad to answer questions tomorrow morning. Going to go through the 5 languages more intensely. Okay? Thank you. You bet.
Thank you so much. I have to say, if you need another newsletter that is really powerful, please sign up for Paul White's newsletters. He has some absolutely amazing information on it. I read them, I pass them on to other clients and friends on how to really, truly appreciate. So thank you for all that you do and how you've helped me in the way that I've learned how to appreciate others. So I appreciate you very much. So can you believe it's already our last night together? So let's make the most of it. We have a wonderful buffet of desserts, coffee, and tea. Plenty of time tonight to fellowship and to reconnect with each other and our sponsors in the back. So enjoy your time together. I do have a couple of things that I'd like to share. Tomorrow, we still have a really big morning in the morning. So